Welcome back, everyone, to Tarot Journeys with Guy. How's everybody doing? Now, yesterday we seen a big release. We saw a couple of big releases. One of them was from Jim Jordan's Committee for the Weaponization of the Federal Government, and basically reports coming out about how Stanford University, in connection with the Department of Homeland Security, the intelligence communities, there's a whole bunch of them, hundreds of organizations that connect to this Stanford organization to censor the American people, to censor people abroad. That had come out. That's kind of a big vindication. We've been saying this for a very long time. I mean, the Twitter files and things coming out on with Twitter and stuff, that was big, but this is a big deal. This is an eye-opener for the people that weren't paying attention. Okay, so that was a big thing. And like I said, vindication for me, because I've been saying for years that, especially the last few years, how much we're being censored. And anybody that has a vocal opinion adverse against the mainstream narrative is shadow banned, blacklisted, censored, effectively taken off the internet in some ways. And we've seen that with big people, obviously, like President Trump. So that's a big story. Well, that's something that's unfolding. And then simultaneously too, there was the information coming out about the Nashville shooter and what they had written and just what we've known all along, and just how disturbing it really is, right? But the rhetoric, the anti-white rhetoric, the going after this school because of the white privilege, and just showed the high degree of brainwashing or indoctrination from that woke perspective, that woke ideology, right? And oh man, and just in the sense of how the media has been trying to cover up so much how damaged these people are, and wanting to spin the narrative that the bigger threat in society is the white Christian people, right? And so this just shows you how much the deep state is, this deep state war is really sort of active. That coming to the surface is kind of is a big thing too, because that's an eye opener for people. And people should be aware of how much things are being influenced. Now, so last reading I did, some things came up around young people and children. And, you know, it's so funny. I'm because I'm a tarot reader, I guess, or just the nature of my personality throughout most of my life, I've always been sort of on the sideline, a fringer, I call it. And I'm just a little bit removed from society in some ways. And so I didn't register what those cards were saying in some ways, like how the young people, part of the wake up for them is waking up to the scam of universities and post-secondary, and this story that we've been told for 50, 60 years in many ways. And in the last 10, 5, 3, we've seen this idea of a middle-class dream being completely eroded. Not these kids, right? These young adults in their 20s, and there's a lot of them that came out on the internet about how they're starting to realize, like, how just because I've gotten a master's degree, for instance, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to earn that much more money. Now I'm way in debt. I don't have a way of getting out of it. And there was a lot of it on the internet, and I realized, like, holy cow, that was kind of one of the things that I was picking up, right? And that's very important. Like, how are we supposed to make ends meet? It is a big scam, right? So that's part of it. So it's like, how much we've been influenced, how much the younger generations have been sort of manipulated into the positions that they're in. And part of that wake up is sort of realizing like, wow, what a scam. What are we going to do though? Right? That's part of the next step. So those are big, that's real life wake up calls, right? So that's important stuff. So, and then all of this rhetoric and everything in the division, right? This is another thing. Oh yeah, and we saw Trudeau talking about bringing in 500,000 legal immigrants, but in like the last couple of weeks, there was a document released from Israel about their plan of moving out 1 million people from Palestine and moving them to other countries, one of them being Canada, right? And that's something that I guess they didn't really want the public to really know about, but it's just really in our face, like how they are creating this replacement population to replace people that aren't facilitating their system, working in the system, paying the taxes, voting for them, right? And that was one of the things, like for the last couple of years, we've been battling that, is that to even have that idea, people were deemed racist and far right, and that's the thing, is like, I guess those divisions and those things, that's coming to the surface to show people really like how it's, for the everyday people, being caught between this left-right divide doesn't make much sense anymore when it becomes so obvious that, like for instance, in most of our parliaments and governments, it's a uniparty. It's this globalist party that, whether you're left or right, they are kind of sharing the same motives and playing controlled opposition against each other. And that's the thing, right? We're seeing this huge backlash against Israel. And people in the West being super surprised that there's a lot of people that support leftist terrorist causes like Hamas. So that's part of the wake up. So we're coming up to the weekend, again, big protests. Supposedly there's this big protest in London around the cenotaph and all of that. And just all over, I mean, we saw last week, it was crazy. And it should be a wake up call to people. The deep state wants us to fight. They want a race war. They want this kind of social division. So it's important to be aware of that, because that's what happened with the J6 thing. People got set up. Okay, so yeah, we're going to look at spiritual guidance. I guess it's kind of like a consciousness check-in. Spiritual guidance. What do we need to hear? What's going to help us move forward in the next couple of days, and what's going to happen if we can get any insight, and what do we need to sort of pay attention to. And then I guess maybe we will do like one specifically, if nothing comes up about the protests on the weekend, and that we're going to look into it that more specifically. Okay. So interesting how the judgment card pops up with the angel Gabriel blowing the horn with the flag of St. George on it, which is the flag of England. Okay. And interesting. Okay. So that card is really about waking up. Like what we're talking about is like the judgment. This is after the battle. This is in the book of Revelation where the people are rising, like there's the retribution, the tribulation has occurred, and they are awakening to the true light, but they are being reborn. Okay. But to me, it's like the wake up, right? And, and this is a card of like the end times. And that's kind of what people really are kind of going on about, is how we're living in the end times. And so yes, in some ways, maybe that is the case. Okay. And it's just such an interesting thing, because religion is one of these, like, religious dogma, and the doctrine within religion is what's being sort of used to manipulate people. That's like one of the first things that was utilized. Now, it's not to say that there isn't good still within religion, right? That's not what I'm saying. It's more the fact that through belief, we can be manipulated, okay? And so this idea of a linearity of time is, from my perspective, and what astrology and what the tarot actually sort of talks about, is how that is a misunderstanding of how timing and the cycles of time works, and what prophecy actually means, okay? That's, funny enough, that's what the judgment card really does talk about, right? So this is the wake up. So whatever's waking people up, this is what's happening, right? And so, and like, that's the thing, it's like watching what's happening, like the UK, like I've been paying attention to both the United States and the UK and Europe very closely. I mean, being in Canada, you have to kind of follow what's going on in the UK. But it's just kind of odd, like watching, and just mostly from social media and YouTube and Rumble and other sites, like where people post stuff. And there's certain people that I follow, and there's certain things that are non-political and political, right? But it's kind of this thing of people not really being aware that they're under attack. And it's kind of the same in Canada and the United States, like, but in the United States, people have been sort of tuned into this, like, hey, look at this. And there are vocal people, but the censorship has been so strong there, I think. And just this, you know, it's interesting, Jim Jordan's post yesterday talking about the information censorship complex, or the industrial information complex, censorship complex, or something, right? That is fully instated over there. So people haven't been really that in tune that all of these little situations that are cultural in making, that are politicized, these are attacks on the people. Now they're starting to wake up to it. The protest in London, such a wake-up call for people over there. And we'll see what happens. Like, because I think too, you got to realize that there are elements on both sides that are trying to play this, and it's to create this situation where there is a race war, a religious race war in some ways. That's their last straw, or one of their last straws, right? So yeah, wake up call. It's so time for people to sort of realize, like, how you've been divided on purpose, and that, like, the not stop oil and the, oh man, and the, like, all of the little things, like, they're all little attacks on the people, on the actual majority of people that will stop it. And so the thing is like for instance, like with Armistice Day, Remembrance Day, I think it's important to commemorate this. But knowing that this is so conflictual, and that this is also being used as a part of an information war, then it might be best to not be a part of that, because you're going to watch the people that are there, that are the protests and the anti-protest, how they're both used, how they're both being utilized. And like what we see, that's is what we see. We see this in the States. We see this everywhere, how everything is so two-sided, and there's a lot of hypocrisy. And so one side can go and do whatever they want, but the other side, as soon as they step out of line one little bit, you're thrown in jail forever, or something terrible happens, right? And this is the measure of a totalitarian state when that starts to happen, okay? And that's part of that wake up. So people have to wake up. But I think what it is more about recognizing how so much of this is being sort of like thrust upon us, like utilized, how some of it isn't necessarily like what we perceive from like the screen, from the internet, isn't the real reality. Like there's a real reality when you're in that situation, right? And that's, even though I'm not saying like, hey, what they're presenting is wrong or not. No, it's just that we are in that state where it is an information war. Now, the other thing that pops up as soon as I saw all of this, I was like, oh man, we've got to remind people, got to keep reminding people, like, the reason why things are going so crazy is because the deep state is losing. We have to remind ourselves of this. And we can't step down. We have to step up. But the call might not be in the way that people are sort of used to, because we have to take a different approach. And I'm talking to people that, we're potentially, like I was saying, like we're on the fringe, right? We have a bigger influence because energetically, we can pulse that energy into the world or connect with the world in a different way, even going to some of these events and things like that, right? That's important. But it's important for people to not get into this dilemma of how things are sliding in such a negative way. No, you're witnessing the death of an old system. And yes, there is an element in that circle of elitists that are wanting to create their own sort of brand of a reset. And then there are people there also in those elitist circles that do not want this. But we also realize, we're realizing, oh man, that old system does need to die. It is so corrupted. The deep state has been running it for a very long time. Everything we're seeing is a manifestation of the machinations of these guys, from my perspective. A lot of people would disagree, or that's a lot of speculation, right? But they are putting us closer and closer to war because they're losing. That's something to really understand. So, interesting too, King Charles, first King's speech since the passing of Queen Elizabeth, and wow, what a globalist. That's all I got to say. The guy, and you can kind of see him, and it's the same thing like with the conservative government. They whinge, and it's like a seesaw. Trying to feel where people are at, because it's working. People talking and communicating and expressing, it's working, man. Because that's what they've been wanting to shut down. It's kind of like what I was saying about in the last reading about revolutionary theory and saturating a population with 10%, 9%. The media has been doing something very similar. They've been using that same kind of notion to sort of sway the majority of people over to the small percentage that perceive a certain things, tricking us into believing that the majority of people see it this way. And that's how they do it. They right? And that's why we have to kind of be more vocal. So yeah, I'm going to draw some cards on the weekend, see what comes up on the weekend here. I think people need to really wake up, how much we've been captured. I mean, it's so incredible. All of this Islamic fundamentalism, part of it, this phase of it, I mean, there's roots even before World War II, and with the with the German army, but also with the Nazis making contact and creating these kind of networks, I guess. And then the CIA and the Soviet Union and the Cold War and British all had a hand in manipulating the scenario, right? And so it's all of that, it has roots within that kind of realm of evil. Like, there's no other way to put it. And then on the other side of it, with the formation of Israel and the Rothschild families and and all of that, man, it's like evil fighting evil in a lot of ways. And that's actually kind of what we're seeing. And to jump in, I mean, right, it's like as far as like what the political scenario is sort of showing us, you can't really jump into it. You have to, it has to be called out that both sides in this conflict, there's money lines and traces and hands that are manipulating both. And we know this. We've known this for a long time, but it's like, you see, like in Israel right now, the refusal of people to sort of accept the notion. I mean, you see it in the States as well, the refusal of people to sort of accept that the government stood down in some way, or that, and I mean, it could be incompetence as well, because they are also like that region that got attacked. This was a lefty woke zone where a lot of peace-loving hippie type people lived and believed that they no war and you should take away guns, and had no way to defend themselves. That's the perfect storm. That's exactly what's going on in Canada. So people have to realize that. People have to realize these things, like on both sides. Like, that's what I was saying, is like people in the States and in Israel don't want to accept that their government could do that, or that it's that corrupted. And like, yeah, and I guess that's kind of what we're seeing in Europe as well. What else came out in Europe was, the German foreign minister basically blew the lid off of their agenda of like wanting to create a European a European United States, like a federal super state, like the Fourth Reich, which we've known all along. People have been saying this like in the 90s. This started, and that's the part of it. It's like, it's all coming out to the surface, and it is corrupt right to the bone, right to the poof. So, and that's, we have to kind of recognize that. So it's really good. Like, it's a vindication. We are going to get through this, and we are going to see more positive things as we kind of get through this. But we are right. We're in it, and there's no stopping this, right? So, or no stopping the motion or the energy that's moving forward. It doesn't have to be like a huge catastrophe, and that's kind of part of it. It's like, they want that, we don't want that. So who's stronger in this situation? Well, the people are stronger, but the people cannot be divided. And so being divided within yourself, this is the spiritual lesson, in that you're not able to see clearly what's going on in the world, what's outside of you. So first, within, you must achieve peace. You must achieve unity. And unity only comes from source, from divinity. That recognizing it within us, right? So, wow. That's where we energetically have this impulse, right, of peace and well-being and healing for the world, and for the people, and for the people that want to see conflict, that are seeking violence and demise, and those are the ones that need to wake up and stop implementing their plans. And we're watching this, and then we're watching other elements sort of come in that are there to offset the deep state. So it's interesting, if you look into like how Nazi Germany worked, or Soviet Union, it was very compartmentalized. One group didn't know really what the other group was doing, and in a way, it's kind of like an alibi. You can negate blame by having things compartmentalized, and especially if it's a hierarchy structure, top down, and people are just following orders. That's how these things get implemented. And this is how the New World Order, the globalist governance system, is being created. This is how they've operated, is through this compartmentalization. And they can implement plausible deniability if they're caught. And this is what we're seeing. So, okay, let's see the weekend. What's it going to be like in the protests? Are there going to be protests? Yeah, there are going to be protests. But let's just see. What do we need to see? Part of the wake-up call around these protests in the Western world, UK, Canada, United States, is partly for us to realize that the law is stacked against us, that the institutions and the police and the military, there are elements within it that can't be trusted, and they are targeting you. So they are relying on people to fight back. They want it, just like what I was saying. And so, yeah, it's such a tough one, eh? It's so funny, this six of wands and the laying of the wreath, right? The wreath of victory. You got to realize, like, the situation that we are in, we're under attack. You're seeing it full force. You're seeing a cultural attack. It's happening. It's in your midst. One of the things that the deep state want to do is take out the elements that are smart enough and strong enough that can fight back. And a lot of the times our reservists and our veterans and people like this, like, I mean, you know, retired police officers and people, so, you know, are warriors, okay? Those are the people, like, they have been systematically taking them out. And that's what they want to do. They want to target these people. So like in London, for instance, you know, see some of these personalities that have been really vocal against the pro-Palestinian, well, let's just call it like the pro-Hamas rallies as well. Yeah, it's so funny. Controlled opposition. You got to wonder about some of them, right? Hey, you know, honestly, I don't support what Israel is doing either. It is terrible, but I don't believe 100% anything both sides are saying, and definitely I do not believe the Palestinian side at all, and the Muslim side at all. That's picking sides with this, because I know what the intent of a lot of these countries and a lot of these groups are. Religiously, it is to eliminate us, anybody that is considered an infidel. So anybody that doesn't submit to their religion, which is what Islam, the translation of it means, is to submit to God, submit to Allah. So, and I mean, yeah, like that's just an interpretation, but we're talking about the Islamists, the jihadists, and so on. That's the thing. It's like, we're seeing people wake up and go, wait a second, this is not why I came to the UK or came to Canada or the United States. My family, generations ago left, right? To get away from that, to stop it. That's what we need to see more of. We need to see these people, because like, that's the thing. It's like, Canada, that in many positive ways, the same with the United States, is built off of immigration, is built off of the people coming here and making a better life. And that's what we need. We need the wake up. We need this to completely stop. And we need the old world mentality to sort of be eradicated, to change, I guess. Yeah, we need the old world mentality to be completely transformed, to change. The brutality and the violence of the old world has to go in some ways. I mean, it's a sort of a part of the universe, but yet humans, this is our wake-up call, right? So and I think that's kind of what these cards are actually telling me, that people have to go, and you need to support the remembrance of our fallen. And you need to remember why our ancestors fought. Right? We need to remember this. But yet, we don't need to be opposed to this rally right now. Until there's enough people, like, I mean, I get it. Like, if there were hundreds of thousands of people that were going to these places to say, no, that's different. But you've got like small groups that are, right? You're witnessing like how your culture is under attack. And it's unfortunate because it, like, really, like 3 years ago, you should have been fighting this in some ways, I guess, or pushing back to such a degree that this isn't happening. I mean, there has been people, right? That's the thing. So you gotta go and do the remembrance thing in another place, I guess, or you gotta realize it's not about nation states anymore. It's this global thing. They're letting people in on purpose to collapse the system, period. And you cannot mince words about it. You can't pretend like it's not happening anymore, right? Like, and I guess that's kind of what it is. But yet, you got to stand down. This is not the hill to die on. Even though, there's a part of me that wants to be like, no, screw that. We got to defend these things. We have to. And so, you got to find a way to do it in such a way where you're supporting the cultural element that represents, but not fighting and being opposed to a protest and getting into this the pro-Palestinian versus anti-Israel, pro-Israel, anti-Palestine debate. Even though it's encroaching on the thing, you got to be talking to people that you go to your church or you go to the ceremonies and say, hey, look, this is what's happening. This is why we can't go down there. I think that there will be. I think there will be some kind of celebration. But I honestly think that there's some kind of on-purpose thing to sort of try and snare people. And people need to be really kind of tuned into that is very much the case. Okay, let's see. One more little one. Interesting. Holding your energy, holding your money. Be mindful of, be mindful. Be very mindful. This is kind of a guarded card, I guess, right? It's kind of good to sort of be a bit reserved, I guess, right now. Hold your energy. Yeah, there's some actually real positive things. Like, I mean, for us that really see on the other side of it, like how as things become more and more chaotic, we realize, like, holy cow, these guys are getting caught. The deep state, these globalist bad actors, these totalitarians that are in our midst, and we have to make efforts to address this now. But it has to be done from the perspective of peaceful pushback, diplomacy, and ending violence, right? And so if there is a violent scenario, especially right now with what we're seeing, because, like, I mean, man, what you're seeing is elements of these people killing themselves off in some ways, like if not figuratively, if not in real, okay? And so it's better to be addressed almost outside of it right now, because you're going to be utilized in that fight. Anybody that is jumping into it, they're going to be utilized. And you got to realize, like, even some of them know this. They're paid to do it. Both sides. we've got a controlled, the problem reaction solution scenario really going on. And so with these protests, these protests it's a big thing in that way. Okay. And so you have to kind of let people, like, what needs to be called out, and we got to kind of in a manner stay out of the way. We're not being sort of directed to like take part in that, because you're witnessing the first rung of the pawns being sort of like shifted. And that's part of it. And we need agitators and we need these types of people, but yet I'm addressing the spiritualized, awakened people, I guess, or people that are awakening to the true nature of what's going on, why there is this confusion. And that's the kind of dialogue we need to continue to have, right? So that's a big part of it. I mean, I was talking about this like months and months ago about getting out of these places. I mean, London and Washington, D.C. are deep state captured city-states. They're not really a representation of the UK and the United States, but yet they are the capital. They have to be reclaimed in some ways, but yet there are things in motion and things underway that are there to sort of deal with that. And the everyday people, the majority of us, our job is to be present in our everyday lives and to activate what it is that we are here to activate. And the open communication about this stuff, that's where we have the most influence. And then also like holding that kind of energy, like the peace, healing, well-being, awareness, truth, holding that energy when we go into our world. Some of us are being sort of like, yeah, we need to fight for our freedom, right? Like, I get it. Like, that's true. You got to really listen to yourself. It's not a situation where, yeah, war is tricky. That's all I got to say. War is super tricky. And there are no winners in war. Never. It's all about losing. And the people are the ones that usually lose the most. Like the people on the sidelines, the civilians, the people they're the ones that get damaged the most. And that's something like, I mean, that's what people got to wake up to. So that's the big thing. It's that dialogue is super important, and just the recognition that we are taking part energetically in something greater. And it's kind of wonderful. I mean, getting out of the fear vibration of, what's next, what's going to happen, is this going to all fall apart underneath of us? Well, this Tower card actually talks about how, no, it's more about the transformation. It's more about like things need to be torn down so that something else can be built, because it is riddled. This whole thing is riddled with nothing that is good. It is almost entirely corrupted. And that's the thing that we're looking at. And we have to sort of like separate the wheat from the chaff. That's part of our jobs in our everyday life. And not to get so caught, right? Not to get so caught by what's being projected out there. Because we're aware that there's elements, like we see all of these people, like, yeah, they're just unwitting pawns. That's why I feel sorry for them, and they need to wake up to it, right? And so there's a lot of people that have, right? And somehow we have to kind of keep connecting with those people and not get caught by the super division that's already there, because it's so present. I mean, money is such a big deal, eh? People are really, that's kind of what they're waking up to, is like, wow, how everything just all of a sudden in the last few years just boom, doubled, tripled. They're talking in Canada about housing prices and what are they going to do and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, one of the ways that they do manipulate us is through money and the fear and the scarcity around that. And so And it's just it's such an interesting thing, because it's like when things are kind of held and you don't bring it out to the light, it starts to turn into something that it's not. And once it's into the light, you can see it for what it really is, and we start to realize, like, oh, wait a second, our fears, they're not as warranted. Like, they don't seem as bad in the light than rather than us holding on to them. So it's like, even like communicating, I mean, that is, I can't stress that more. That's such a huge deal. Okay, this is kind of interesting, because this is kind of like a Biden figure. This guy kind of represents the deep state, though, in all of these bad actors. But something definitely like what we're saying is what's been kind of, something is being held onto. It's like physical evidence, and that's going to come out, which we kind of know this already, but like is big, and it's for our benefit. That's something we got to kind of hold on to and maintain, that's going to happen, because it's already, like, there's been leaks, but we're coming up to something that's big, right? And it's going to sort of shift the perspective. It's going to give us definitely a bit more hope in some ways, or we're going to start to see, like, yeah, this is actually working, because there's like this accumulation of evidence that's taking place. And once it starts to fully come out, but like, I guess maybe it is something with Trump and the election, but just keep tuned in, because it's happening, right? And that's the important thing to sort of realize, is that these guys are freaking out because they're losing, and we got to maintain this. They want us to believe that we're losing, and that for us to give up, and we're not going to give up, and we're going to get through this. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. So please make sure you hit the subscribe button, leave a like, and wherever you are, take care. And I hope to see you on the next one. Bye-bye.